So next we are going to be covering writing polynomials, okay? So in a polynomial function, x equals b is a 0, okay? So b is going to be the number that it crosses through. So then x minus b would be the factor of the function. For example, on here, our factors, or our zeros are -2, 1, and 3. That's where it crosses the x-axis. X equals -2, x equals 1, and x equals 3. So then that means that the factors are x plus 2. This one's x minus 1. And this is x minus 3. So opposite sides, okay? So here it says f of x equals 8 times, and if you notice they match up. I said this one was x plus 2, x minus 1, and x minus 3. And so this a that's in the front is a number, and we don't know what the number is. It just depends on which point they want this graph to cross through, because it can look like this. It could probably look going through the exact same zeros, come up higher, come down lower, and then back around. So that's what will affect this letter here, A. Sometimes if it's negative, it'll end up turning around the opposite direction, but still cross through those zeros. So it says, write the equation in any form of the polynomial with the given zeros and passing through the given point. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do some examples. So first, if x equals 0 is a factor, okay, then that means that x, because it's equal to 0, that means just x by itself, no plus or minus anything, is a factor. Okay, so if x equals 5 is a 0, then that means that x minus 5 is a factor. Okay, next we have x equals -1. So if x is equal to -1, then that means that x plus 1 is another factor. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and multiply these. So first we're going to start off by multiplying these two. And I'm going to go ahead and multiply it off to the side down here in a box. So it'll be x minus 5 and x plus 1. So x times x is x squared, 1 times x is 1x, x times -5 is -5x, and -5 times 1 is -5. So then we're ready to go ahead and write this all together. So x squared, okay, 1x and -5x, these are like terms, so I'm going to combine them. I hope I don't confuse anyone, but -5 plus 1 is -4x, and then -5. Okay, now we still have this x in the front. Okay, so we still need to multiply the x times each one of these terms. So x times x is x to the third power. X times -4x is -4x squared. And then x times -5 is -5x. Okay, so this is what our function equals to. So y equals this. Now remember, they put an a here in the front because they wanted to cross through a certain point. And this specific point that they wanted to cross through is 2 and -54. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to plug in our x and our y value. So instead of y, I'm going to put -54 equals, we don't know what a is, that's what we're looking for. And then we are going to plug in everywhere where I see an x, I am going to plug in a 2. Okay, so it's going to be 2 to the third power minus 4 times 2 squared minus 5 times 2. Okay, and we are solving for a. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of that in my calculator exactly the way I see it, just the part that's in the parentheses. So 2 to the third power minus 4 times 2 squared minus 5 times 2. And that gives us -18. So we get -54 is equal to a times -18. Okay, so then our next step to solve for a is going to be to divide both sides by -18. So -54 divided by -18 is going to give us 3, +3. So 3 is equal to our a. Okay, so then that means that our function equals f of x equals, we're going to take the 3 that we found out a was, and we're going to have to multiply it times our function, which is what we got here. Okay, So x to the third power minus 4x squared minus 5x. Okay, so we're going to have to distribute this 3 to each term, and that will tell us what our function is equal to. Okay, so f of x equals 3x to the third power minus 12x squared minus 15x. And that's it. That would be your solution. Okay. So super simple. You start off first by, if we look here, just to review one more time, we start off in the first step is to multiply. So we first multiplied these two and we multiplied them box method, and this is what we got. Okay, then we multiplied the x, or we distributed the x times each one. Okay, then we figured out what a was by plugging in the point. Okay, then once you plugged in the point and you found out what a is, you go ahead and distribute that a to your function, and then it gives you your final answer. Okay, so if you didn't get it there, we're going to do it one more time. Okay, so we start off with the zeros that they give us. So here they give us a few more zeros than we had earlier. So here we have x equals 0. So if x equals 0 is a 0, then that means that your factor is just x. Okay, the next one, if x equals negative 2 is a 0, then that means that x plus 2 is a factor. If x equals 2 is a 0, then that means that x minus 2 is a factor. And last, if x equals 3 is a 0, then that means that x minus 3 is a factor. Okay, so then from there, we're going to go ahead and multiply, but this time we have 4. Okay, on the other column, we only had 3. We had these 2 in the parentheses and the x that's outside, and here we have 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and multiply these 2. And this one will be a little bit simpler because all I got to do is distribute this x to each one. So we get x squared plus 2x. Okay, when I multiply these two, I'm going to go ahead and have to multiply them in a box. Okay, I don't have to multiply them in a box, but I just prefer a box method because it keeps my my notes nice and neat and organized. So then here we have x times x is going to give us x squared. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. And negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. So here we get x squared. Remember, I combined the like terms of negative 3x and the minus 2x together. That gives us negative 5x plus 6. Okay, once we get that, now we got to multiply these two together, and we're going to get one whole function. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and multiply those. I'm going to have to multiply them in a box, and it's going to be a 2 by 3. So this is going to be x squared plus 2x. And then this one is going to be x squared minus 5x plus 6. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply them. X squared times x squared is going to give us x to the 4th power. X squared times 2x is 2x to the 3rd power. Negative 5x and x squared is going to give us negative 5x to the 3rd power. 2x times negative 5x is going to give us negative 10x. 6 times x squared is going to give us 6x squared. And then 6 times 2 is going to give us 12x. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and write this off to the side. I have x to the 4th power. We combine these two like terms. 2x cubed and negative 5x cubed is going to give us negative 3x cubed. We have negative 10x. Should this one be a squared? Yeah, this one should have been a squared. Negative 10x squared and 6x squared. We combine those two like terms, and that gives us negative 4x squared. And then we have that 12x that has nothing to combine with, so it stays like that. Okay, so once we're done multiplying, all this section is multiplying. Now we need to figure out what this a is, okay? And the way that we figure it out is our function is equal to y equals, and then this. They wanted to pass through this point 112. So you have to plug in 1 for x and 12 for y. Okay, so here I have 12 equals. A, we don't know, that's what we're looking for, times, and then everywhere where I see an x, I'm going to go ahead and plug in a 1. So 1 to the 4th power minus 3 times 1 to the 3rd power minus 4 times 1 squared plus 12 times 1. Okay, and I'm going to put all of that in my calculator exactly the way you see it. Let me go ahead and take out my calculator real quick. This gives me 6. Let me go ahead and go up. So it gives us 12 equals a times, and everything in the parentheses gave me 6. So then our last step to solve for a is to divide both sides by 6. 12 divided by 6 gives me 2. So 2 is equal to a. Okay, we're not quite done yet. We need to go ahead and plug in a. So we take this a here and we plug it in here to find out what our function is equal to. So I'm going to go ahead and do that in my last step. So f of x equals, we said a is 2 times x to the 4th power minus 3x cubed minus 4x squared plus 12x. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and distribute that 2 to each one. So when I go ahead and multiply 2 times the first one, it gives me 2x to the 4th. 2 times negative 3, negative 6x cubed. 2 times negative 4, negative 8x squared, and then 2 times 12 gives me 24x. And that would be my equation that has all of those zeros, and it crosses through that given point. Okay? So remember, it's just 3 steps. We multiply, we plug in and solve for a, and then our last step is to distribute a to each one in that function. All right, let's see what's next. Okay, next is multiplicity. So multiplicity is the number of times a factor appears in a polynomial function. Look at the following polynomials written in factored form. So what that means is, if you see, we have x minus 1 that appears twice, okay? So the way that you figure out that you have a multiplicity of 2 is by looking at the graphs. So it says here, the factor of x minus 1 has a multiplicity of 2 because it's repeated 2 times. If a polynomial has a factor with an even multiplicity, 2, 4, 6, 8, etc., then the graph of the polynomial will touch the x-axis at the 0, but it will not cross it. Okay, so if we look here, this is your basic quadratic function. You have x plus 6, x minus 7. It looks like a parabola. Okay, but say we have this one over here where we have x plus 6, x minus 7 squared. If you notice, your graph kind of loops around right here at 7. It touches it, but it does not cross it, okay? And that 7 is from here. Remember, if x minus 7 is a factor, then x equals to 7 is a 0. They give you another example here. X plus 6 has a multiplicity of 2. So the graph loops around, hits right there at negative 6, and comes back down. Okay, so it touches the x-axis, but it doesn't cross it. So it's still considered a 0, okay? If x plus 6 is a factor, then remember, x equals negative 6 is the 0. And then the last example here that they give you with multiplicity, this one has 2 multiplicities, at x plus 6, which is this one right here, and at x minus 7, which is this one right here. Okay, you can see that your graph touches the x-axis, which makes it a 0, but it doesn't cross it. It tells you here what the zeros are. So here, it says write a function in any form that would match the graph shown. So we're doing the exact same thing that we were doing earlier. All right, so let's see. We have a total of 1, 2 zeros. But because this graph doesn't cross right here, that means that this number, it's going to have a multiplicity of 2. So I'm going to go ahead and write my factors. Remember, that's our first step. So here we have x equals negative 2 is a 0, so that means that x plus 2 is a factor. Then we have here at 5, that means that x minus 5 is a factor. And we have to write it twice. It has a multiplicity of 2 because it doesn't cross it. So like we did on the other problems, we're going to go ahead and multiply these two first. So when I multiply them, I'm going to go ahead and make a box down here. Oh, sorry. It's x plus 2 and x minus 5. So x times x is x squared, negative 5 times x is negative 5x, 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Okay, so when I multiply those two, it ends up giving me x squared. Negative 5x plus 2x gives us negative 3x minus 10. And so we still have this minus 5 that we haven't multiplied, x minus 5. So now we're going to have to multiply these two, and then we're going to have an even bigger polynomial. We'll go ahead and erase it all just so it doesn't get so messy. All right, so let me go ahead and make another box. This time it's going to be a 2 by 3 because we have x minus 5, and then here we have x squared minus 3x minus 10. Okay, we're going to go ahead and multiply it. So x squared times x is x to the third power. X squared times negative 5 is negative 5x squared. Negative 3x times x is negative 3x squared. Negative 3x times negative 5 is positive 15x. Negative 10 times x is negative 10x. Negative 10 times negative 5 is positive 50. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and write it all out. We have x to the third power. Let me erase this just because I don't want it to get messy. And then we combine these two like terms. Negative 5 and negative 3 gives us negative 8x squared. 15x and negative 10x gives us positive 5x. And then we have this positive 50 at the end. Okay, so once you are done multiplying, remember, you are going to go into the next step, and we need to figure out what a is. So y equals a times whatever this is. Okay, and the way that we figure out what the number is that we have to plug in a point. I'm going to erase this again. So this point, we're going to go ahead and pick any point on here. I'm going to go ahead and pick this point because they clearly made a dot here for a reason. So between 80 and 120, it would be, I think this is counting by 20. So 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So it's 100. Okay, so our y value is a 100 there, and our x value is 0. Minus 8 times 0 squared plus 5 times 0 plus 50. Okay, put all this part in my calculator exactly the way I see it, and it gives me 50. Then our last step to solve for a is to divide by 50. And that gives us 2. So a equals 2. So once you find your a, you move on to the next step. You go ahead and take this a, and plug it in right over here. Okay, and that will give you what your function is equal to. So f of x equals, my a is 2 times x to the third power minus 8x squared plus 5x plus 50. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and distribute that 2 to each one. So 2 times x cubed is 2x cubed. 2 times negative 8 is negative 16x squared. 2 times 5 gives us 10x. And last, 2 times 50 is 100. That's it. That's what our function is equal to. Okay, the steps are not difficult. I know you guys know how to do these things. It is just very tedious, and if you make one tiny little mistake, it might mess up your problem. So you just got to be very careful. Okay, so let's go ahead and try the next one. This is the last one. So here we are going to notice that we're going to have a multiplicity of 2 right here and a multiplicity of 2 right here because our graph touches but it doesn't cross. So at this number, this is negative 5, I believe. So it's going to be x plus 5 is a factor. 2 times. Okay, on this one, that means that x minus 2 is a factor. 2 times because it has a multiplicity of 2. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and multiply the x plus 5s. I'm going to do it off here to the side. X plus 5, x plus 5. So that gives me x squared, 5x, 5x, and 25. So when I multiply these two, it gives me x squared. The 5x and the 5x are like terms. Together, that gives me 10x plus 25. Then I have these two. I'm going to go ahead and multiply it in another box off here to the side. X minus 2, x minus 2. So x times x is x squared. negative 2x, negative 2x, and a positive 4. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and write this down. X squared, both of the negative 2x's gives me negative 4x when I combine them together. Remember, you add them together, you don't multiply. We already multiplied in the first step. Okay, now we have these two polynomials. We still need to multiply these two together. So I'm going to go ahead and make another box. This one's going to be a little bit bigger. It's going to be a 3 by 3. Okay, so we have x squared plus 10x plus 25. This one we have x squared minus 4x plus 4. So x squared times x squared gives me x to the 4th power. X squared times negative 4x gives me negative 4x to the 3rd power. X squared times 4 gives me 4x squared. Then we move to the next spot. 10x times x squared is 10x to the 3rd power. 10 times negative 4 is negative 40x squared. 10x times 4 is just 40x. Now 25. 25 times x squared is 25x squared. 25 times negative 4 gives us negative 100x. And then 25 times 4 gives me 100. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and write this all out. We have x to the 4th power. And then here, if you notice, we have negative 4x cubed and 10x cubed. Together, that gives me negative 6x cubed. When we look for the next set of like terms, we have 4x squared, negative 40, and 25x squared. So when I combine those, let me go ahead and put that in my calculator real quick. And that gives me negative 11x squared. And then next here I have 40x and negative 100x together. That gives me negative 60x. Let me give myself enough room. And at the very end, we have the 100 that has nothing else to combine with. Okay, so once you multiply everything, which is what we just did, we move on to the next step. Y equals A times, we figure out what A is. And so A, we're going to go ahead and use this point that they give us. That point, our Y value is negative 200, and our X value there is 0. So it's going to be negative 200 equals A times. We don't know what A is, that's what we're looking for. And everywhere where we see an X, we are going to plug in a 0. And then we plug it into our calculator exactly the way we see it. And at the very end, we end up with A times 100. Okay, then from there, we go ahead and divide both sides by 100. Negative 200 is equal to, or negative 200 divided by 100 gives us negative 2. Okay, once you find A, remember you go in and you plug it in over here. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that in. Instead of writing y equals, we write f of x equals negative 2. And then the whole function that we got after we multiplied everything. Minus 60x plus 100. So we distribute that 2 to each one. And this will be the equation of our polynomial that passes through that point and has those exact same factors. Whoops. This should be 12. 12x cubed plus 22x squared. Negative 2 times negative 60 would be a positive 120. And then negative 200. And that's it. That would be your answer. All right, thank you guys. We'll see you guys tomorrow.